Netflix's latest shark film, Thrash, is streaming now, and when you release a film whose title is one letter away from the word trash, it better be pretty good. This video is brought to you by Factor. Go to factormeals.com/Murrell50off and use code Murrell50off for a special offer, and stay tuned after the video for more info. Hello everybody, I'm Dan Murrell here with my review of Thrash, which is streaming now on Netflix. I was actually really excited about this movie for a couple of reasons. Number one, obviously I like shark movies. And number two, the film was written and directed by Tommy Wirkola, who is a Norwegian director. His movies are often super unhinged, and I'm a particular fan of Dead Snow, which was his zombie Nazi film. I actually watched that movie way back in the early days of what was then Netflix Instant. That's how long ago that movie came out. I also really liked Violent Night, starring David Harbour as an action hero Santa Claus. There's a sequel coming out later this year that I'm looking forward to. Thrash is yet another in a very long line of shark movies that were spawned 51 years ago with the success of Jaws. And when I look at a shark movie, my threshold for success is never, is it as good as Jaws? Because that is an impossible threshold to meet. Really what I'm looking for when a new shark movie comes out is a film that decides what tone it wants, sticks to that tone throughout, and delivers on the sharks. Open Water is a very good shark movie with a serious tone. Deep Blue Sea is a really fun shark movie because it's so over the top, even in the parts that might be more quote-unquote serious. Where the big failures have come for me in the shark movie genre are the movies that want to have it both ways, that want to play it super cheesy and over the top, but also keep a straight face throughout most of the film. I just don't think those two tones work together. It's one of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of the Meg movies, and for a lot of its running time, Thrash falls into that same trap. Thrash takes place in the seaside town of Annieville, South Carolina. Annieville, get it? And the movie starts shortly before a massive Category 5 hurricane makes landfall. And because one of the producers of this movie is Adam McKay, we are reminded on several occasions that these hurricanes are worse and more frequent because of climate change. Most of Annieville's residents have already fled, but a few have stayed behind. Bridgerton's Phoebe Dynevor plays Lisa, a recent transplant to Annieville, who's also 9 months pregnant and couldn't leave town because her boss made her work until the last minute. Just quit at that point. Whitney Peak plays Dakota, a young woman who's recovering from the recent death of her mother and is so unplugged from the world that she didn't even know a hurricane was coming. Jaimon Unsu plays Dakota's uncle, a marine biologist who conveniently spends his research time tagging sharks so they can be tracked. And we also meet a trio of foster kids whose a-hole foster parents don't think the hurricane is a big deal until it's too late. These kids are all played by Australian actors, and they all have the same kind of Southern accent that I think people that watch movies think is authentic, but sounds completely wrong to anyone who actually, lives in the South.
The water is just under the windows over here. Not anymore, it's creeping up. It's gonna keep doing that until we drown or get eaten.
The oldest of the kids is played by Stacey Clausen, who is also the co-lead character in Leviticus, one of my favorite films from Sundance this year that's getting a release from Neon in theaters that has nothing to do with Thrash, just a plug for a movie I really liked. The hurricane is bad, but things get really bad in Annieville when the levees break and the whole town is flooded by the storm surge. One of the first things to be destroyed is, and I am not making this up, an 18-wheeler full of what I would describe as meat slurry from the local meatpacking plant. And a flooded town plus literal blood in the water means that Annieville and its remaining residents are soon targeted by a literal flood of vicious bull sharks. Now, if this premise seems familiar, a Category 5 hurricane floods a town, which brings vicious animals into contact with humans, it's because it is the exact same premise as 2019's Crawl, which was directed by Alexander Aja, but they're actually totally different movies because this one has sharks and that one has an alligator. So, not the same at all. The meat truck of it all is really a good example of my major issue with the movie because I think objectively, the idea of an 18-wheeler full of meat juice leaking into flooding ocean waters to attract sharks is a great setup for a crazy, insane shark movie. And Tommy Wirkola makes really good, insane, crazy movies in the past. I've enjoyed several of them, or a few of them at least. But the mortal mistake that Thrash makes throughout all of its runtime is that it plays the rest of the film almost completely straight. And when you're asking the audience to pick between one of those two tones instead of having them coexist with each other or just going one way or the other, that to me affects the enjoyment of the film. Thrash is full of stock characters and stock situations. There's a lady who's 9 months pregnant, so what do you think the odds are of her going into labor? The dialogue is full of recycled stories and platitudes you've seen and heard a million times before. There's a big hero moment that is very obviously set up early in the film. It just kind of comes and goes as if it was just an obligation. And the storm itself isn't very impressive. We see lots of stock footage of devastating winds and flooding rains, but in Annieville, this Category 5 hurricane doesn't look much stronger than a tropical depression. I imagine that the lack of practical weather effects was a budgetary restraint because a lot of the movie takes place in what I imagine are very expensive flooding sets full of water, and they look pretty good. And the movie is full of what looks like very expensive computer imagery to make the sharks, and they don't look half bad either. So I'm guessing making it actually, rain and have hard wind blowing outside had to go out the window. It's also just a dumb movie, which is perfectly fine if that's the kind of movie you're setting out to make from the very beginning. But when you ask us to take it seriously, then the dumb parts stand out and are a little harder to forgive. At one point, a group of characters trying to reach Annieville passes a sign saying that they are 100 miles away from the town by boat. We then see several scenes of them traveling at no more than 2 to 5 miles per hour in this little rubber raft, and yet somehow they miraculously arrive in town in less than 2 days. Now, that could be a funny joke if they had lampshaded it and drawn attention to it, but they don't. It feels like they're just hoping that we're not paying attention, and given what's been reported about Netflix and what they think about their audience's attention spans, maybe that's not so far off base. However, after about an hour of being a mostly bland, forgettable shark movie, the last 15 minutes turn into what I was excited about when I first heard the phrase Tommy Wirkola shark movie. The last chunk of the movie had me saying in my living room, because it's acceptable since I'm at home, that's it. Why couldn't the rest of the movie be this? The dumb jokes that seem kind of corny earlier in the film are lampshaded and drawn attention to and made jokes in and of themselves. There's a perfectly delivered wardrobe joke that kind of excuses what I thought was a cliche moment earlier in the movie. The action is crazy, blood and guts start flying everywhere, dynamite gets strapped to stuff. If the whole movie had been executed like this, I would have loved it. It's like Tommy Wirkola signed on to direct the movie, but then had to negotiate with the studio about just how much of the movie he'd be allowed to be himself. Apparently, what we got in this film was the best and final offer. On the technical side, I think that Thrash is perfectly okay. I mean, the flooding effects are done well, even if the storm itself isn't that impressive. The sharks aren't overused, which in a shark movie means they also look pretty good. I think they're mostly digital, probably with some practical touches thrown in here and there. The acting is acceptable for a movie of this caliber. I don't think anybody's particularly bad, even though the southern accents are atrocious. And overall, the movie does actually have some style, unlike a lot of movies on streaming. Maybe because this movie wasn't originally meant for streaming at all. Thrash has actually had a pretty long road before it landed in your Netflix queue. It's had several title changes since it was shot a couple of years ago. It was on the release schedule from Sony theatrically last summer before Sony pushed the release date and then sold the rights to Netflix earlier this year for the direct-to-streaming release. All of that taken together, to me, makes it seem like nobody ever really knew what this movie was, and that's a shame, because at 75 minutes, if you don't include the end credits, this is a pretty quick watch, and if all 75 of those minutes had matched what we get at the end of the movie, I think that this could have been a really great, campy, gory, horror classic all the way through instead of just at the end. And I think it also could have been a breakout hit. I mean, maybe it still will be. Netflix's last shark movie, Under Paris, put up huge numbers a couple of years ago. But what I get from Thrash the most is missed potential. There have been some great serious shark movies and there have been some great goofy shark movies, but not really any great ones that have tried to be both. And there's a reason why that is. Unfortunately, Thrash gets added to that long list. So on my personal rating scale, I am giving Thrash a rating of it's fine only because it did finally deliver on its potential at the end of the movie. Those last handful of minutes are going to be a great rewatch for shark movie fans. But taken as a whole, this movie is definitely not a classic or anything close to it. Should Thrash deliver on the promised sequel that's set up at the end of this movie, my hope is that they will pick up where they left off at the end of this one and not go back and repeat the same mistakes again. So those are my thoughts on Thrash, which is now streaming on Netflix. What do you think? Did you already watch it? Are you planning on watching it this weekend? Let me know down in the comments below. And before we go, I'm going to thank the sponsor for this review, Factor. Picture this. It's been a long day, you're tired, you want to eat something healthy, but wouldn't it be so much easier to eat something fast and not healthy? Well, now you don't have to choose because Factor provides delicious meals that are quick and easy to prepare and that are also healthy. My schedule is pretty insane for most of the year. Days on the road, late night driving, all night edits. And it's great to know that I always have a healthy, quick, delicious option right there in my fridge whenever I am able to eat. Factor has meals that are built around whatever your goals are, whether that's eating lean, eating more veggies, or upping your protein. They even have a Muscle Pro collection for strength and workout recovery. One of my favorite options is on the menu for next week, the green chili queso burger. I'm a big fan of peppers with just about any meal, and that really hits the spot. Factor meals are fresh, never frozen, with over 100 meals rotating weekly, and they're delivered right to your door and ready to eat in 2 minutes. I love being able to eat no matter what time of day it is or what my schedule's like, knowing that I'm still able to hit my own personal goals when it comes to diet and nutrition. Head to factormeals.com/Murrell50off and use code Murrell50off to get 50% off and free daily greens per box with a new subscription only while supplies last until 9/27/2026. See the website for more details. Once again, that's factormeals.com/Murrell50off and the code Murrell50off. Thanks to Factor for sponsoring this review, and thank you for watching. Be sure to stay tuned right here. I have a video coming up tomorrow on Bad Robot, J.J. Abrams' production company, tracing the history of it and kind of the downfall of it over the last couple years. I'm super excited about that one. And of course, stay tuned for the latest in movie news, reviews, box office, and more. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.